There was a gate on my dock, a locked, 6-foot iron gate, drilled in, blinking red, and I didn't put it there. That's how my Tuesdays started. One minute I'm sipping coffee, the next I'm staring at a security camera aimed at my lake like I'm trespassing on my own dream. No warning, no knock, no common sense, just a smug little monument to HOA overreach welded onto my piece. Leave a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Porch, recliner, HOA meeting, escape room. We won't judge. If you're into true feeling stories packed with twists, poetic justice, and just the right splash of HOA madness, hit that subscribe button. Tomorrow's story? Let's just say the gate drama was polite compared to what's coming next. Trust me, you'll want front row seats. It didn't take long to find out who installed it. Tiffany Langford, HOA president, lavender blouse, clipboard grip like it owed her money. She marched down my gravel path like she was hosting a ribbon-cutting ceremony for stolen land. "Good morning, Mr. Harmon," she chirped. "We've installed a protective barrier around the community shoreline access." I blinked. "That's my dock?" She smiled like I'd just misunderstood an eviction notice. The HOA secured the lease last fall. It was county land after the bait shack closed. Notices were sent. Sure they were. Probably taped to the inside of her wine fridge. Now, here's the kicker. I'm not in the HOA. Never was. Bought this cabin back when the lake was quiet and the neighbors waved with full hands, not hidden agendas. My deed's clean, my taxes are paid, and I've fished that dock longer than Tiffany's been alphabetizing bylaws. But apparently a sliver of no man's land between my property and the water got scooped up while no one was looking. And guess who moved in, with fences and a surveillance budget? It wasn't the ducks. I stood there, jaw tight, heartbeat ticking like a sprinkler valve. She kept talking. Liability, safety, community benefit. It was like listening to someone justify stealing your lunch because it's healthier than what they packed. "You're welcome to appeal," she said, "though as a non-member you don't have voting rights." My grip tightened on my thermos. Not in rage, yet, but in realization. This wasn't an accident, it was a plan. A quiet, paperwork-wrapped land grab dressed in HOA perfume. That gate didn't just block a dock. It split something deeper. I wasn't just fenced out of the water. I was being erased. One fabricated lease at a time. But here's what Tiffany didn't know. I didn't just build storm drains for a living. I understand flow, force, and pressure. I know how to turn a valve. And she had just installed the first piece of a story I was going to finish, with coffee in one hand and something a whole lot sharper in the other. I gave it a week to see if maybe Tiffany and her clipboard cult would come to their senses and quietly remove the monstrosity they bolted to my dock. They didn't. So I did what any rational, slightly over-caffeinated man would do when diplomacy fails. I brought out the bolt cutters, not to vandalize, to liberate. That dock was my dock, my name on the tax records, my sweat in the boards. I figured one clean snip and maybe they'd get the message. Instead, I got Tiffany and a sheriff, and a lesson in how legal gray areas turn pitch black when the HOA knows how to fax things. The deputy was polite, which made it worse. He looked almost embarrassed as he studied the county parcel map Tiffany had practically laminated to her soul. "Sir, looks like this portion of land, this here, is under lease by the Hemlock Point HOA. Technically, you can't modify the structure on it." Structure? It's a gate on the edge of my life? And now the law said it belonged to them. Tiffany stood off to the side, arms folded, watching it all like she was judging a high school science fair. "We're happy to discuss this at our next board meeting," she offered, with the kind of smile you usually see from someone who just found out you're allergic to shellfish, while serving you shrimp. I went to that board meeting, walked in like a man showing up to reclaim his dog from the pound, only to find out the dog had been rebranded as community property. They sat in a semicircle of denial, nodding as Tiffany read from her updated use policies like it was gospel. I asked if any of them had visited the parcel in question. One guy said he saw it once on Google Earth. Another muttered something about trusting the process. Not one person stood up. Not one voice of reason. They were all riding shotgun in Tiffany's HOA clown car, and I was the roadkill. That night, I stared at that gate, that smug steel fence dividing my right from their rewrite. I was ready to give up, maybe throw in the towel and build a floating dock off the side of my shoreline like some kind of nautical outlaw. But then I saw it. A real estate sign, faded, half-hidden, planted on the dirt just beyond the fence. Right on the strip of land Tiffany's gate was actually drilled into. At first I thought it was old, some forgotten marker from when the bait shop croaked. But curiosity kicked harder than caffeine. I called the number. A woman answered. Crisp voice, Oregon area code. Her name was Evelyn. Said she'd inherited the property from her late husband. Forgot it even existed. If you want it, she said, make an offer. Frankly, I'll be relieved to get it off my books. I didn't even haggle. I sent the paperwork that night. The gate, the dirt, the strip that Tiffany thought was hers, it was going to be mine. Legally, quietly, and completely above board. Because sometimes the only way to beat a queen is to buy the throne she's standing on. And oh, just wait till she finds out who owns the bolts under her clipboard kingdom now. Ever buy something so petty, so pointed, so perfectly legal that it makes your coffee taste better the next morning? That's how I felt holding the deed. Signed, sealed, notarized. I didn't just buy a strip of dirt. I bought the steel nerve center of Tiffany Langford's illusion of control. That gate, that land, that whole smug stretch of HOA arrogance, mine now. And the best part? She didn't know. Not yet. Because when you pull off a move this clean, you don't announce it. You let them walk right into it like a squirrel trap baited with ego. I gave it 2 weeks. 2 glorious, silent weeks. Watched them host HOA planning meetups right on the other side of my dock like nothing had changed. Folding chairs, iced tea pitchers, one guy even set up a Bluetooth speaker. I kept watering my tomatoes and waving politely. Then, the morning of their big annual summer brunch, I made my move. I walked down to the gate with a fresh lock in one hand and laminated poetry in the other, swapped out Tiffany's padlock like I was changing a bike chain. Then I zip-tied my sign in place, private property, access by owner, permission only, nothing fancy, just facts and fonts. An hour later, the HOA herd started arriving. Pastel polos, linen pants, a few sun hats that looked like they came with trust funds. They clustered near the gate, peering at my sign like it was written in Aramaic. That's when Tiffany arrived. Clipboard? Check. Smug grin? Polished. She walked straight up like she was about to narrate a ribbon cutting for her personal legacy. Slipped in her key. Nothing. Tried again. Still nothing. That smirk? Dissolved like sugar in lake water. She jiggled the lock, yanked it once, then did that slow look around. The kind people do when they're hoping nobody noticed they just failed in public. But oh, people noticed. There were chuckles. Someone muttered, "She changed the lock again?" I watched from my porch, lemonade in hand, pretending not to hear anything. Tiffany fumbled with her key one more time, then pulled out her phone like it might solve structural reality. I walked down slow, every step soaking in the shift, the way her stance stiffened, the way heads turned. I reached the gate, leaned casually against it, and tossed her a yellow folder. It landed with a soft slap. Inside, a printed copy of the deed, with the parcel map highlighted in neon. She opened it like it was radioactive. "You can't be serious," she said, voice tight. "You can't just buy HOA property." I smiled. "That's the thing. I didn't. You leased half the land. The other half was for sale. I bought it, legally, thoroughly. And now, Tiffany, your little gate here is standing on my soil." The silence that followed was delicious. Behind her, board members whispered. One guy with a Bluetooth earpiece looked like he wanted to become invisible. Stephanie, the only one on that HOA council with 2 brain cells and a backbone, crossed her arms and tilted her head like she'd just watched a courtroom drama twist she almost predicted but still fully enjoyed. Tiffany's fingers twitched. She opened her mouth, then closed it, the kind of moment where every word you want to say is legally inadvisable. "This brunch," I said, "is now invite only, and you didn't make the guest list." And that was the click that mattered most. Not the lock, but the shift. The power dynamic. The narrative she'd been controlling with clipboards and capital letters just cracked down the middle like old lake ice in spring. And the ripples? Just starting. Once you own the dirt under their gate, you have two options: gloat like a fool or file paperwork like a professional. I chose option 3. Both. First came the county notice. Simple document, very official, very dry, confirming that any structure on parcel 421B, including fences and accessways, now fell under my sole property rights. I copied the letter 3 times, one for the HOA board, one for the sheriff's office, and one for Tiffany. Laminated, because I figured she liked shiny things. Then I installed a motion-stringed floodlight on my side of the gate, not to record, just to illuminate. Nothing says, "Your reign is over," quite like a solar-powered spotlight. A week later, the HOA fired back. Not legally. That would have required a lawyer with shame. No, they mailed me a community grievance letter, written in Comic Sans no less, accusing me of sabotaging neighborhood morale, said my light was intimidating, and my sign discouraged community engagement. I responded by mailing back a copy of the deed and taping a new note to the gate, "Morale not included. Batteries sold separately." It was around that time I realized Tiffany wasn't used to people pushing back. She was a clipboard general who'd never been told no in Arial bold. That was about to change. A few evenings later, I heard a knock. Not a pounding HOA-style knock, a polite one. It was Marissa Wynn, the HOA secretary. Younger, sharp-witted, dressed like someone who'd rather be anywhere else but in a meeting about fence heights. She asked to walk the boundary line, said she had a few questions. We strolled the property edge, her face twisting more with every marker. "You know," she finally said, "Tiffany told the board this was uncontested HOA land, that you were just a squatter with a fishing pole." I handed her a copy of the plat map. She squinted, then sighed. "I do admin work, Dale. I know a lie when I see it in triplicate." That moment, that's when the real cracks started. Because HOA boards, like poorly built decks, don't collapse all at once. They rot slowly, from the inside out. Marissa asked for a copy of the deed, for records. I gave her 2. She promised she'd bring it up at the next closed session. I told her to bring popcorn. And just like that, the tide started to shift. Not publicly, not yet, but behind closed doors the whispers began, the kind of whispers that turn into motions, the kind that smell like mutiny marinated in Robert's Rules of Order. You can fight chaos with rage, or you can file the right form and let it simmer, and oh, was it simmering. Because while Tiffany doubled down with tantrums and typed threats, I had the law, the land, and a floodlight that didn't blink. The next chapter? Well, let's just say they tried to invade by water. Just when I thought the battle lines had been drawn in concrete and sarcasm, they floated in on buoys. Bright orange ones, strung together like clown pearls across the lake, bobbing with a smug little sign that read, "Community Swim Area, HOA Members Only." I stood on my dock, coffee in hand, blinking like I was hallucinating public zoning violations. Apparently, when Tiffany couldn't win on land, she decided to colonize water. She fenced the dock. Failed. So now she was fencing the lake? I swear, if she could have bottled air and invoiced me for it, she would have. Within days, I noticed the boats. Paddle boats, inflatable kayaks, one guy with an electric trolling motor and a Bluetooth speaker blasting yacht rock like he was on Lake Geneva. They weren't just drifting, they were docking. On my side of the shoreline, people stepped onto my land like it was a designated picnic spot, waving like this was Disney and I was the park greeter. One couple even brought a basket and a portable wine table. Tiffany said, "This area's open now," the man smiled. "New lakeside landing zones." I pointed to the new sign I had zip-tied to my fence post. "Private property, parcel 421B, trespassing is not a group activity." Now I could have raised my voice, could have thrown fish guts in their cooler and called it even, but instead I called the county again. The zoning officer, same guy from before, walked the shore, looked at the buoys and snorted so loud he scared a duck. "They think they can privatize navigable water," he said, hands on hips. "You're gonna love this letter." Within 72 hours, the buoys were removed by county order. Tiffany didn't show up that day, but she did send a mass HOA email with the subject line, "Temporary swim zone closure due to misunderstood guidelines." Misunderstood? Lady, you fenced a lake. You misunderstood the planet. And just when I thought that was peak HOA absurdity, my neighbor's teenage son, Mikey, good kid, chronic Red Bull consumer, handed me a manila envelope like it was a spy film. Inside, leaked HOA meeting notes. Apparently, Tiffany had hatched a plan to hold a vote, to reclaim my property as common-use greenway space. Like democracy could override a deed, like ballots beat land titles. One line actually read, "If we vote it, we can motion it into community." I almost choked on my coffee. HOA monopoly, now with imaginary land rights. That's when I knew it was time to go from defensive to decorative. I called an old buddy of mine, Bruce. We'd worked together in the water systems field. Now he worked in environmental zoning, a man who knew how to weaponize dirt legally. Together we pulled up property code, conservation clauses, and the state's non-commercial preservation statute. Turns out, since my strip of land was narrow, unused, and not designated for utility, it qualified for eco-habitat classification. A few forms, a site visit, and 2 weeks later, my dockside became a legally protected rest corridor. No events, no gatherings, no recreational use, not without a permit signed by me and stamped by the county. So while Tiffany was out there trying to vote the shoreline back into her clipboard, I was filing river-adjacent paperwork that basically turned the property into a federal do-not-touch zone. Her board didn't take it well. But the best part? I didn't even need a lawyer. Just time, patience, and a system that, every now and then, still works for the guy who reads the footnotes. Next up, we see what happens when Tiffany tries to throw a party on land that now legally belongs to frogs. They always go down hollering, but Tiffany, she went down in fonts and footnotes. The final audit, pushed through by Marissa and 3 quietly rebellious board members, unearthed over $90,000, 0 cents in misused HOA funds, including a board wellness retreat to a spa 3 counties over, booked under her niece's name. There was even an invoice for community ambiance upgrades, which turned out to be string lights for her backyard. The board gave her 2 options, resign or face legal action. She resigned, citing toxicity and unfair scrutiny. I called it Tuesday. After that, something shifted in Hemlock. People loosened up. Conversations at the mailbox got longer. Folks I'd never spoken to dropped off cookies, craft beer, even one handmade plaque that said, "The gate stands because one man did." I left it on the porch next to my fishing rod. As for the gate, I kept it wide open. No padlock, just a small laminated sign. Access by courtesy, respect gets you in, entitlement gets you nothing. You'd be surprised how many folks actually paused, knocked, and asked. Turns out a gate isn't about keeping people out. It's about seeing who bothers to ask first. Now, Tiffany wasn't done. Oh no, she tried to make a comeback online, started a Facebook group called Save Our Shoreline, complete with blurry photos of the fence and posts about land hoarders. She even launched a YouTube channel where she filmed rants in front of a green screen lake. One video claimed I seized sacred public shoreline and fenced it like a tyrant. My favorite was when she labeled me gate goblin. I didn't even respond. The internet did it for me. Someone turned my porch photo into a meme. Me, lemonade in hand, under a caption that read, "You shall not bass." It all culminated one Saturday when the town held its first Lake Appreciation Day. Barbecue, kids fishing, Stephanie reading off new HOA rules that actually made sense. Then, because irony is alive and well, they handed me a wooden plaque in recognition of integrity, patience, and the right to say, "Not on my dock." A kid even asked if I was going to write a book. I said if I did, it'd be called Karen and the Fence That Couldn't. And just as I was about to sneak off, a teen walked up, nervous, ball cap in hand. "Sir, I was dared to sneak through the gate, but my grandpa said askin' first was better." I smiled, reached under my porch chair, and handed him a laminated permission slip. "You passed the test, kid. Welcome to the lake." Later that night, as the sun dipped below the trees and the lake glowed like a memory, I stood up and walked over to the fence post, pulled something out of my old tackle box. The original padlock, rusted, frozen shut, still marked with Tiffany's paint. I set it on the post, gently, not as a warning, as a relic, a reminder that control isn't power, boundaries aren't walls, and the best fences, they don't keep people out, they show you who's worth letting in. And that's how it ends. Not with a lawsuit or a scream, but with a rusted lock on a fence post and a boy holding a permission slip, proof that respect still means something, even in the age of clipboards and HOA madness. I didn't win by yelling louder or building higher. I won by standing still, standing right, and knowing exactly what belonged to me. This wasn't just about a dock. It was about boundaries. Not the kind made of metal or bylaws, but the kind made of decency, patience, and quiet resolve. Tiffany brought a gate. I brought a deed, a flashlight, and a fishing chair. And in the end, she left with a fine. I stayed with a community. So what do we take away? Maybe this: entitlement will build fences, but character decides who gets through the gate. Maybe that holding your ground, calmly, legally, cleverly, is still one of the last quiet forms of power left. And maybe the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's the life that keeps going, better, funnier, and wide open for those who actually deserve to be part of it. If this story made you smile, made you think, or just made you yell "yes" at your screen, go ahead and hit that like button, drop a comment, and tell us where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe, because next week, we're talking about a guy who got fined for having ducks and answered with a drone, a lawyer, and a very spicy HOA barbecue. Trust me, you won't want to miss it.